Hey, welcome everybody. I am so excited to be here. We have had an amazing several days leading up to today. I'm still kind of discombobulated by a lot of the energies. I don't know about you guys, but I discovered how much I needed sleep all of the sudden yesterday, kind of out of the blue, and it just hit me like that. So I don't know if you've had any of this kind of energy highs and lows, dips coming in, coming out, but we're going to talk about a lot of what's going on right now, specifically over the last few days and what it's going to look like as we move forward. So, as you may know, we had a new moon on the second or third, depending on where you are located. And this new moon was monumental. Now, we're not going to get into the moon per se. It's really, from my perspective, I want to share and connect the dots to how these different planetary and cosmic alignments are really impacting how we move through our life and what plays out for us, and try and give a little bit of support, maybe a little bit of insight as to how you can best navigate these times. Because right now we're being gifted this beautiful golden opportunity. No pun on the word gold, because it's this golden, Christed unity, consciousness, and perspective and frequency that we are all being urged to step into right now, that can feel really amazing in some moments and then really uncomfortable in others. So, without further ado, let's dive into it because there's a lot I really want to share. Hey, thank you for joining us. Okay. All right, so this moon is a Virgo new moon. It is really around themes of purity, transformation, self empowerment, and what we were actually playing with as well is from numerology is this 1111 gateway that was creating for us. And maybe you felt this like a passage, like literally being the doors or the walls were kind of closing in a little bit as we approached Sunday, then Monday, then Tuesday, and like you're being herded into a pathway, a narrow passage moving forward that was going to be kind of hard to get away from. Can anybody relate to that? Yeah. Where did you notice it in your own life? For me, I know I'm seeing it in the areas of like home, where we're living, tying up loose ends, bringing things together financially. There was just, yeah, a lot of really powerful and life changing stuff that was taking place. But really, there was no getting around it. Not that we, or I was really looking to escape any of it, because what it was doing, and maybe you can relate to this too, is as I took one step further and further towards this door, which really did for me culminate on this new moon, it was like having to basically bring everything together. And then, regardless of if it made you nervous, regardless if you were super excited, there was a bit of all of that, but then just having to walk through, having to go through the door, because there's really nothing else you can do. Well, I suppose you could run, but that doesn't feel like you, does it, at this time? It's about feeling the jitters, but not being too swayed by them and just wanting to go through the door anyways. So that's this passage that we've been playing with. And let's talk a little bit more about kind of what's going on and what you may have been noticing. Okay, so we had the new moon on September 2nd and 3rd. We talked about this really this 11 portal that's opening to new beginnings. It gives you this feeling or sense of like more openness and willing to explore new things. Did anybody feel or notice that you've been more open to like something that maybe seemed far-fetched up until now, but now it's kind of like, you know what, that's not so crazy after all. I think I'm ready for that. That's what these alignments are really bringing forth in us, a feeling of being okay, even though some of this newness that we're being introduced to feels perhaps quite large. And I want to actually, I'll bring this up now. These alignments haven't happened in a very, very long time. Some of them haven't happened since 2008. Hey, Joey. Yeah, Joey says yes. Hey, Joey. There we go. Yeah, it's a real thing. They haven't happened since 2008. Some of them have not taken place since 2020. So I'm going to ask you, as you go through and listen to some of what we'll be talking about today, bring yourself back to, where were you in 2020? What did it feel like? What were you doing at that time? Or going back into 2008, what were you doing? So there was the same kind of energy taking place, and it was really amplifying this need for responsibility and spiritual connection. So, what were you doing? Right? It's also a very much an energy of opposition. So, confronting, but in a different way. It's like opposing forces, right? So there's this, but then there's also that. And, like much like what I described in the beginning. So there's feelings of like excitement, perhaps, but then all feelings of like jitterness or like even a little bit of fear or angst. So they both take place at the same time. It can be emotionally felt, it can also be very situationally. So you have circumstances here setting you up for something that feels like you really want this thing, but then at the same time, there's something else happening that feels completely juxtaposed to that experience. This is what I don't want, but this is also happening here, what I do want. And they're kind of going down the same path. Like you have to go down the path and you can't escape the path. And on the path, there are both of these things presenting to you. So if you want the thing that you really want, that feels really aligned with who you are and what you're excited about, you kind of can't get away from it. And so you have to go, not you can't get away from it. In order to have it, you can't get away from the thing that also is showing up that you maybe don't like. Does that make sense? Now, underneath this, and this is where the taking responsibility comes in, there is this knowing, and this is the part that makes it feel pretty good, to actually be facing the things that you maybe don't want or don't prefer, because it's like cleaning up messes. And we're going to talk about that later. So taking full responsibility for our experience. And the thing about opposition is it also brings balance. Does that make sense? Can you see why that might be? Like when you are having two opposing forces, they're kind of the opposite. What generally happens is something in the middle is what you end up with. And so in the case, if you're being faced with the allure of something that you do want on the path that's being presented to you, alongside with that bit of what you perhaps don't want, underneath that thing that you don't want, you're likely going to find that there is this silver lining, or really this gold that you find, that because you're facing that thing that's not preferred or not to the lower mind desired, it actually creates a lot more goodness. It shows up with a lot of gifts because you simply are dealing with it. Does that make sense? Let me know if you can relate to that. Yeah, Joey's saying, yeah, I'm in the cleaning up messes phase. I hear you, brother. And that is what we're literally doing right now. It's really quite cool. So it's taking responsibility for our entire experience right now. Now, it's also what we're talking about and playing with a lot right now, and this is literally what's been just coming on strong for the past week, I'd say, is the idea of addressing illusions. Now, I know that there's probably a lot of talk of addressing that kind of stuff on the world stage, but I'm not talking about that. We don't really go there so much in these conversations. This is about what's happening inside, what's happening with you, what's happening between your relationships. So if we look at that, it's about addressing illusions, and these are the illusions that the lower mind is going to create. When I say the lower mind, I'm talking about the ego mind. It's very convincing, especially spiritual ego. I've played with them all, but it's very convincing. And so this energy is bringing up the questions of like, where are you in denial? Where are you clinging to dreams or illusions of things that are really pie in the sky, right? We have the influence of Saturn right now. And Saturn is about like, just get realistic. Like, let's just look at things as they are. Let's call out the facts. Let's stop fluffing things or pretending that they are something that they aren't, or pretending that this doesn't exist when it really does. And it's about bringing that all to the surface. And why, we'll get into. But anything that isn't founded on in within your true soul path is what is coming up. So what do you know in your heart of hearts that you need to call yourself out on? What is it? What is it? For me, I've been calling myself out on one thing really big, and I'm still working on it, and it's communication. Being able, or less resistant to, or a combination of all of that, of being able to address communication in a way that feels aligned and also is, I hate to say the word timely because it's such a loaded topic, but timely. So there were times in the past where it's just like, you know what? I was not wanting to admit that it was actually an issue for me, where I didn't want to let things slide in terms of communication. Or on the other extreme, I would just be diving in and just going back to communications for in an attempt to not feel bad about getting back to people in a long, let's say in a very slow time frame, not what I would have preferred. And so doing my communication and spending more time and going back to it more quickly, more frequently. Meanwhile, it was again my own lower mind trying to keep me off track of other things that I was really more aligned to be doing. So this push and pull towards communication. Do I stay in balance with where I'm being called to be in the moment, which is stay focused on this. Don't worry about XYZ communication. You can come back to that. Or being completely on the opposite end. So for me, it's kind of been a game of that. And I've really been dancing with that the last couple of weeks. Where have you been seeing this? Where have you been noticing it? So I'll encourage you to take a look as well. But it's about calling ourselves out on these things that maybe we haven't wanted to look at. Maybe we see them, we know the pattern, but it's like, oh, I really hate admitting that this is a thing. Where is that playing out for you? This time right now is about bringing all of those to the surface. On one hand, it's about illuminating where there's actually a pattern that we don't want to admit, or even deeper inner emotions that we are not wanting to acknowledge. Being out of alignment with something and calling it something completely different just so that we feel better about it, when meanwhile, in our heart of hearts, we know there is something that needs to be addressed. Where are you noticing that for you? Okay. So Saturn is activating a need to look at things more practically, take responsibility, and then make the changes that you need to. So where is there a change in that area where you're seeing a pattern play out that you've been denying, that you've been, oh no, it's not that, it's this, and calling it something else, or holding on to a dream that is very it's been described to me as like pie in the sky, like illusionary or even delusionary, where we're simply not wanting to face something, that underneath that there is simply programs and limiting belief systems that are preventing us from being who we really are, standing in our true strength, and being able to follow the path that our higher self and soul is really laying out for us. And usually there's fear hidden under that, right? Fear of wanting to face something, fear of change, fear of the judgment, what others might think if we do this thing different. Well, right now there's also, thankfully, this beautiful energy that is supporting us, making us want to do things differently. So again, more juxtaposition of these energies, but it's all really designing us to, or helping us to be able to but present more authentically by shedding these old ways of being. So very cool. All right, so take responsibility, make the changes you need to, and then be truthful, not for anybody else, but for you. What do you need to be more truthful about for yourself? Now, some of this comes with being truthful or speaking out about something, outwardly admitting things, not for the other people per se, but it's all for you. But just being able to speak something out loud as opposed to always keeping it in, not being willing to talk about it, not being willing to share about it. This is big, right? This is going back to that theme of like the things that are illusions or the things that have been hidden and suppressed. And this is very much going in alignment with the purging theme that we've been looking at for a very long time, pretty much all year. It's more and more of that. Okay. The truth will set you free, right? This is that same kind of 2020 energy, 2020 vision, clarity, truth, and illuminating all of that. Now, even though this is a new moon, it's really the full moons, which are much more about illumination, but this is kind of like the carryover and sort of having this feeling like we have to just get this stuff out of us, voicing things, admitting things, and then cleaning up the mess, like we talked about before, like Joey said, right? In the cleaning up mess phase. It's a beautiful place to be because it's forcing us to face our fears or face our inner critic, which is sometimes a lot worse than the fear. The fear of the inner critic is sometimes the most powerful fear because that inner critic knows all your weak spots and all your sensitivities. Okay, it's the master story weaver. Okay, so the other part too, there's a focus on leadership, but not leadership like we have maybe thought about or aspired to in the past. This is leadership from within, or perhaps better said, for within. So the message I'm getting is don't worry about trying to lead the rest of the world to freedom, which so many of us on this path often are so focused on. Right now, it's about leading yourself to freedom first. Does that resonate? Right? The message was don't worry about trying to lead the rest of the world to freedom. Lead yourself to freedom first. Big, big concept. Because what does that mean? It's really that analogy of the oxygen mask, isn't it? Right? Putting the mask on yourself first, that's what we're talking about because it's an inner game first. So the mind is going to be the one that says, oh, I have to be focused on them. I need to help them. They need to be saved. They need support. They're not doing things right. Meanwhile, for now in particular, that is all really being presented as distraction. Think of this as like a perfect little bubble opportunity where we all have an opportunity. I say all because everybody is going through something very similar, regardless of what they may say, regardless of how they may look on social media. Everyone collectively, we're all going through a very similar experience. So know that this window or this calling or this yearning that you're feeling is being felt by probably just around everyone in varying degrees. So it's a window that's being presented for you to be able to look within, and really the distractions that the mind is going to give you about no, I have to be focused externally is all a distraction designed to thwart your own progress. So just know that. Joey's shared a little here. Yeah, what a great way to describe it. It definitely feels like I need to lead myself to freedom right now and stop people pleasing. So good, Joey. Yes, it's such a thing, isn't it? Right? And it's so easy because the mind is often really bent on and tries to applaud us for being like, I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but the idea of being righteous, like it's better. You see this a lot in certain communities where it's like, in religious communities too, sometimes where it's about being, it's more righteous to do this. We must look out for our fellow man. And it's not to say that that isn't true, but how do we often best do that? By looking after ourselves first, as we said before, kind of like cleaning up our own messes is often the best way, in even in this human physical world, to support others. Because as we do, we're more fortified, we have more to offer. But on the spiritual and energetic side, we are then examples and are offering to the collective matrix these codes that say, I figured it out, I accomplished that, I did it, I cleaned up my own mess. Here, now let me give you the cheat codes on how you can do it too. It's essentially what we do for each other as souls, right? Thank you for sharing that, Joey. Thank you. Okay, so let's see here. So this little window is giving us space to focus on ourselves, space to focus on you, okay? Your home, your path, your priorities, your peace, your transformation, your mastery, okay? How does that resonate? So it's a very significant and rare set of alignments that are taking place right now, supporting this rise of like personal leadership, looking inward, taking care of our own mess first, right? It's also a time where the theme of teachability and ownership is coming up big for everybody in our own ways, right? It's kind of like we're being called out by our higher aspects, right? Anywhere we need it, it'll be there, right? So how teachable are you? Are you familiar with this concept of teachability, right? How teachable are you? How willing are you to admit that you don't know it all? The reality is we don't know what we don't know. So being open and being teachable, especially in this spiritual sense, being open is going to be huge right now. Are you brave enough to take ownership of what you find? So to face what's in the closet of your mind and in your heart, this is what we're being asked to do. Are you brave enough to face what you find in the closet of your mind, in the closet of your heart, the truth that's in there? You know, the mind wants us to believe that it knows it all. It's heard it all. I know that already. And that's when you're in that energy, you're in that state, you are not teachable at all. Our teachability just drops. It's called a teachability index, something I was exposed to many, many moons ago, and it's always stuck with me. It's like, how teachable are you? So when the mind is telling you, oh, I know that, oh, I don't need to listen, stop. Have the awareness that you're being fed a story and just be open. So when you are in a state of higher consciousness, there isn't this shutting down of ideas when we hear them. It's more of a, okay, well, let me hear that again. Let me see if there's anything else in there that I didn't hear the first time. That's an openness, a receptivity, and teachability, really. We could say they're all kind of similar, one and the same. But when we are shutting things down, we're less likely to be able to not just get new ideas that perhaps are helping put us into greater alignment with our true soul path, but also we're less likely to be receptive to the clues or the flat out, illumination from our higher aspects of this, dirty laundry that is trying to be exposed for us. Because who likes to have dirty laundry? Nobody. But we all have a little dirty laundry somewhere, right? And what's the best thing and always feels good to do? Just do your laundry. Throw it in the wash. So this is that time of like being shown, hey, did you forget those socks under the bed? Pull them out, throw them in the wash. So don't ignore, don't say, oh yeah, I know, I checked under the bed. I know there's nothing there. If you get the inkling or if you've given a little tip to check under the bed, check under the bed. See if you have any socks, underwear, a pair of pants. Take out the dirty laundry. Now there is freedom in that. So you're going to discover that it actually doesn't feel so bad. That resistance piece that forces us to like want to turn the other way, want to close our ears, want to get angry and resistant towards whatever it is that is shining the light, that's the part that when we squash it by actually not listening, it feels better because we're letting the self judgment go. We're letting the judgment of someone else go. We are being honest. We're being more clear, and we're able to be more love. And love is our truest expression. That is what the soul, that's what God, that's what source, that's what spirit really is at its core. It's love. And it's this frequency of that. But we pinch that off whenever we let the lower mind get into the driver's seat and tell us what we shouldn't be listening to, or not to be open to at least considering or looking at something a different way. This is what this time is really, really big for. We're all being forced to like clean up our messes. Okay. And really, this is the era of Christed consciousness and what that's about, right? It's about being the way, being the light, being the truth. Christ said it himself. He spoke those words. But to do that, what do we need to do? We need to shed old ways. We need to embrace new ideas, especially at this time when all of the structures and structures in the form of thought structures, ideas are simply thoughts in structured form. That's what's being torn down now as well. And so it can be very confronting. Yeah, very opposing ideas can be presented, but being open and being willing to look at everything is going to be very empowering. It's going to be what really moves the needle and will allow you to make these profound transformations that you're being invited into right now. And the mind has a way of really convincing us that change is bad, that if it doesn't go the way I see or have seen it in my mind's eye, the way I've wanted to have it, that it's not good and it will be worse, as opposed to the idea like, hey, maybe that idea that I've been holding on to is not the highest potential for me. Maybe if I let that go, what opens up on the other side is even better. That's the world we're playing in right now. And those are the kinds of opportunities that are presenting. So, how brave are you? Are you brave enough to listen, to look, to consider these new ways? It's unnerving, it's a little scary, but it's also exciting. And if you feel into it, there is a part of you that says, oh my God, if I only could. Oh, if I only could. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can. And when you do, it will set you free. Okay. And Joey says, yeah, the most darkness I've ever been in was when I thought I knew it all. Being teachable is everything. Yeah, I hear you, brother. Thank you for sharing that. It's not often talked about, I feel, this idea of teachability and, the ego's arrogance of feeling like it knows it all. And it has a way, it's brilliant, it's beautiful. I so appreciate the ego mind. I really do. And I have so much, I applaud it a lot because it's our own inner albeit artificial intelligence. It is here, what we came for. And it's such an important part of this human experience. So I don't knock it, but it's clever. It's clever. And so its job is to try and convince us of things that are not true in an attempt to throw us off of our path. And this is why I love it, because it's a game, right? It's just a game. And so being better at the game than your mind, your lower mind is what this reality is all about. And what this time is about is just getting better and better and stepping into our mastery around that so that we can be in this perpetual state of teachability, of this openness and receptivity to what? To truth. To truth. Yeah, higher and higher truth. Thank you, Joey. All right, So when we shed old ways and we embrace ideas that are closer, more in alignment with our souls or our higher aspects, divine truth, that true divine wisdom, right? That just constantly is getting refined and stripped down to the core. When we do that, we are not leading by teaching. We can be higher expressions of ourselves, but we do so by learning about ourselves, first and foremost. We do that by connecting more deeply to true, and you could say more pure ancient wisdom. This is what Virgo is bringing in. It's like purity. Let's purify it. Whatever it is, let's purify it. Let's cleanse it. Let's get rid of anything that is distorting, that's clouding over, that's muddying up. And what it is trying to strip away is the distortion of our own expression, of our own human experience. Where is the distortion coming through? Because whatever it is that we are expressing as is what we are creating. So if we're seeing things in our life that is not a reflection of how we really would love it to be, it's just a perfect opportunity to look inward and see where the distortion is coming from. And it's always going to be stemming from the lower mind, the beautiful ego mind, that is wanting to convince us of something that is not true, to throw us off track of the true path our soul is leaving those beautiful golden breadcrumbs for. And then ultimately, if we are getting more into alignment with this more purified, rarefied truth, what are we doing? We're being more pure expressions of who we are, and then we are being truer and higher examples by which we are serving and supporting others. So this is where it comes back to leadership. First, leadership inwardly, leading ourselves, but then once we are leading ourselves to higher and higher expressions of who we're here to be, then we are actually being examples for others, higher examples for others. Okay, so this is basically calling us and requires detaching from the old structures. Okay, all those structures, whether it's to do with career, work, personal relationships, whether it's intimate partnerships or even family, all relationship dynamics, everything is being purified, cleansed, and detoxified of the inverted matrix or the ego expression and distortion. Everything is up for purification, especially at this time. We're going right into Virgo season, so it's amazing. Okay, letting go of delusions, doing things differently, facing what you fear, shining the light on resistance. What patterns are you too ashamed to admit? Oh, I was talking about some of mine. What are some of yours? Look at them. They're not as scary as the mind is making them out to be. It's uncomfortable to admit them. It's uncomfortable to look at them, perhaps. But then once you move through that, it's like, oh my God, that was so liberating. I'm so happy to just have that clear out in the open. I've said it, and now I can do it differently, right? So the stopping of ignoring, of being in delusion is when you are in the midst of the illusion and you can't see beyond it, right? So getting out of delusionary states about ourselves, about our relationships, about our business, about our work, about our finances, about our health, whatever it is, all of that is up. And when we do that, then we realize we can ground more deeply into our own spiritual truths, into who we are here to be, realize our true power, and realize we actually can fly. That we can. Let me see here. Okay, beautiful. Lastly, are we on lastly? I think we are. It's about ownership of self with a commitment to continued self-mastery. So it's not about being perfect or feeling like you have to be. You don't have to be perfect to be love, to receive love, experience love, or to make a huge difference in the world. Can you guys relate to that? Yeah? Is that making sense? Do you believe that you don't have to be perfect? We're all in this together, and everyone really is on their own journey, but we're all on really similar journeys here. And this phase that we're in, we're already now just starting to feel the energy of 2025 coming into play. It starts, it feels like it's a bit early. We'll really be feeling it in October, but right now it's starting. And it's that glimmer that you've probably felt where you're not that different from your neighbor, that you're not that different from your rival, that we are really at the core all in this together. And we're all doing our best. And then take that one step further. There is this feeling starting to really break through, if you have not already experienced this, that we are all really one. Beyond being different, beyond being on similar paths, we are one. And you are just another expression of me. I am an expression of you. We are all expressions of God and Source. And our differences are not things to be compared to be critiquing, to be judging. They're to be celebrated, because that uniqueness is what we came here specifically to be and to share. Okay. Virgo purity. So the energy is about purification, mostly though of the mind. Other times past, there's been more of an emphasis on the body, and that is still present, but it's so much on the mind. Purity of our ideas, or purifying our ideas, our intentions, our perceptions, and ultimately doing all of that so we can purify our creations, what we are creating moving forward. We are creating heaven on earth, but the way we are creating it, we're creating it from within, right? You are the projector that is playing the movie of your life. How do you change the movie that you are watching or experiencing? By changing the film inside your mind. How do you do that? You change your thoughts by changing your perspective. So that's what we're doing right now. Okay. Peace, purity, and spiritual connection. This is all being really lit on fire right now, because this is the time when we are wanting to step more into that. Leading into 2025, this is just going to skyrocket. So 2028 was a profound alignment. This is the same energy now. Very similar in 2028, very much in 2020. What did you do? For me in 2028, this was a huge explosion in my own spiritual evolution. Massive, massive. Like I'm talking like a rocket ship. Complete game changing in my life. Complete. I mean, I started really diving into energy and into soul and alignments and spirit. It was just like, whoa, it was blowing my own mind. And then in 2020, I mean, we know what happened in 2020. So much, right? So what is happening for you right now? This is the same energy that's setting the stage for just as dramatic transformations in your life. I know we're looking at like new locations, completely different places of being, of living, of existing. And then within that, for us, what I'm seeing in my own life is like completely different ways of carrying on day to day, even though the themes behind like our purpose work, for example, isn't really shifting that much. It's just how we go about doing it day to day is like evolving rapidly. So what are you noticing? Let me see here. Okay, going back to perfection. Thank you, Joey. I tried being perfect and failed miserably, so I gave it up. I love that. I love that. I think that's probably the best thing you could have done. Thank you, Joey, for giving the rest of us permission to not have to be perfect. So good. Okay, so it's just all of the different planets that are at play here. So right now we've got Mercury, which is really representative of the lower mind. We've got Chiron, this wounded healer. energetic and dynamic. And then Neptune and Pluto, there's several different alignments that are taking place right now that are creating the shift towards um, deepening of spirituality, deepening of transformation, and really putting the emphasis on the individual, the personal journey that we're going through, and all in an attempt to move us into the higher heart, the unified mind, and ultimately more and more into the personal knowing of unity consciousness through our own experiences. I hope this has been informative as well as resonant, but I'd be very curious to know how this all lands with you. There was a lot to share today because of this big moon, so we've gone longer than we normally would. I recognize that, but yeah, I'm very curious to see what your experience is like. So Joey's sharing here. Brother, appreciate all your shares. So great today. My entire life has changed and keeps changing in the last 3 months. Yeah, I believe it. It's nice, but a bit unnerving. Yeah, right? So we've been going through tremendous change. We're in this little pocket where we're going to have a little bit of reprieve, but we're really on the fast track. And so this time is designed for us to kind of get really comfortable with things. I want to say the first thing that was about to come out of my mouth was of things falling apart. Just get used to it. Right? Get used to things falling apart. But then what happens on the other side is there's this recreation process. And that's what we're moving into as we go into 2025 and then 2026. And so all of the crumbling that's taking place, the breaking down of those structures, whether physical, mental, or emotional, or habitual, all of that is all in preparation for this new reality experience that we are creating and want to create at a soul level in alignment with who we really are, devoid of the distortion of the lower mind, of the ego mind, and do what we came here to do. We can't do what we came here to do or be who we came here to be if we are playing with old, sticky, heavy structures that don't represent at all where we want to go. It's like you can't bake a gluten-free loaf of bread if you're using gluten flour. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. We at a soul level are wanting to make gluten-free bread. And so in order to do that, you have to clear out of the cupboards all of your wheat flours and replace them with gluten-free flour so that you have the ingredients to build your gluten-free bread, which is like the ultimate goal. Not really, but in this analogy, yes. I happen to be a gluten-free bread baker, and so I suppose that's why the analogy comes to mind, but it's very much like that. We need the building blocks available to build heaven on earth, especially if we're birthing heaven from within. We have to be the building blocks. New projector to project and create the new reality we want to create. All right. My loves, I feel like I just threw a whole whack of stuff at you. Let me know in the comments how this landed. Any questions? Anything else you want to share? Please do. We're in a powerful, powerful time, and so much more is coming up for renewal. And what comes after this teardown is so much goodness. This is where you get to realize the real dreams that you've had that perhaps have not been spoken in a long time, but they now start to get created naturally as we step further and further away from old ways of being, old things we've depended on, and have the courage and be brave enough to step into the new. Being honest, being clear, not being afraid, stepping into places where you're forced to stand on your 2 feet, take ownership and responsibility for who you're being, what you're doing, and then creating from there. And as you do, You prove to yourself that you are that powerful creator that you came here to be, that you've always hoped you could be, and that you know that you are deep down inside. And now you start to create the evidence of that. And that sets us free. That feels incredibly powerful. And that's what you're here to do. So go have fun. And on that note, I have to go. I love you dearly. Let me see. Thank you, Joey. You as well. Thanks for sharing. And thank you to all of you for your contributions, energetically and otherwise. This is a powerful container. So much love to you. Until next time.